The dropship trembled as it pierced through the alien atmosphere, turbulence slamming against the hull like a beast trying to tear it apart. Captain Elias Carter tightened his grip on the restraints, eyes locked on the planet's surface as it came into view through the viewport. Jagged obsidian ridges cutting through a sea of violet mist, bioluminescent rivers twisting like veins of fire. No signs of life, no movement, a world caught in an eerie stillness. 2 minutes to drop, the pilot called out, voice crackling through the comms. Lieutenant Kim, seated across from Carter, exhaled sharply. I don't like this. Feels too empty. It's an uncharted world. We don't know what normal looks like yet, Carter replied, but even he felt it, the unnatural silence, the weight of something unseen pressing against them. The mission was simple on paper. Establish a secure landing zone, assess threats, and make first contact if possible. The reality? They were stepping onto an unknown battlefield, blind and untested. The dropship's thrusters flared as it hovered a few meters above the rocky terrain. Go, 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 the pilot barked. Boots hit the ground, weapons raised. The squad spread out in a tight formation, their helmets feeding real-time data to their HUDs. Oxygen levels were stable, gravity slightly heavier than Earth's, but nothing extreme. Still, the tension hung thick. Sergeant Hale knelt, running a gloved hand over the ground. Soil's warm, like something's been here recently. Carter scanned the horizon. Eyes up. We're not alone. The words had barely left his mouth when Private Jace, positioned on the outer edge of the formation, let out a strangled gasp. His body stiffened, lifted off the ground by an invisible force. For a moment, he seemed suspended, weightless. Then, his torso twisted violently with a sickening crack. His rifle fell first. His body followed in pieces. Contact, Kim shouted, dropping to one knee and firing into the emptiness. The other soldiers followed, but their rounds struck nothing. No visuals, no readings. Hale barked, dragging a stunned rookie behind cover. Carter's heart hammered as he switched to thermal. Nothing. Stay together. Tight formation. Another scream. A second soldier lifted, limbs jerking as if controlled by unseen hands. His helmet shattered, blood spraying through the air before his body was thrown like a discarded doll. Then the enemy revealed themselves. They didn't appear in the traditional sense. They phased into existence. Angular bodies of shifting metal and dark energy, eyes like frozen voids. The Kryn. Carter had seen footage, read reports, but nothing compared to standing in front of them. They moved with mechanical precision, their elongated limbs barely touching the ground. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Kim cursed. They were here the whole time. The Kryn did not speak, did not gesture. One simply raised an arm, and another soldier crumpled to the ground, his armor ruptured as if crushed from the inside. Fall back, Carter ordered. The squad scrambled, firing control bursts. The Kryn advanced undeterred. Plasma rounds passed through them before their forms solidified again, shifting between tangible and intangible states. They're predicting our shots, Hale gritted out. They're playing with us. A Kryn warrior reached for Kim, fingers extending like liquid metal. She twisted away just in time, firing point-blank into its head. It staggered, not from pain, because they did not feel pain, but from recalibrating. That second was all she needed to plant a charge against its torso and detonate. The Kryn collapsed into a mess of liquid metal and shattered components. Kim exhaled. They're not invincible. No, but they learn, Carter said grimly as the others halted their advance, calculating, adapting. Then they vanished again. The battlefield turned silent once more. Regroup, Carter commanded, checking their dwindling numbers. 7 left. They'd landed with 12. A voice crackled through the comms. Command. Captain, report. Carter didn't look away from the mist beyond. We've engaged the enemy. A pause. They're better than us. There was silence on the other end. Then, understood. Extraction is not an option. You are to complete the mission. Kim scoffed. Of course we are. Carter turned to his team. We don't need to kill them all. We just need to disrupt whatever system they're using to cloak. Find it, and we stand chance. Hale frowned. And if we don't? Then we die without ever seeing what killed us. A grim chuckle from one of the soldiers. Not exactly my preferred way to go. They pressed forward deeper into the alien terrain. The Kryn were watching, waiting. Carter could feel it. And he knew they weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to survive long enough to matter. The air was thick with static, charged by the lingering energy of the Kryn's presence. Carter could feel it, an almost imperceptible hum beneath his skin, like standing too close to a live wire. The enemy had withdrawn into the shadows, recalibrating, adapting. But they would return, and when they did, it would be with an efficiency designed to erase every human on this battlefield. 15 minutes until reinforcements, Kim reported, her voice clipped as she crouched beside Carter. Her fingers danced over the interface of her rifle, checking charge levels. Might as well be a lifetime. Carter took a slow breath, scanning what remained of their squad. Hale was wounded but still moving, his left arm sluggish from an earlier glancing hit. Reese, the demolitions expert, was setting up the last of their mines, though they both knew it was a weak attempt to buy time. 3 others held a perimeter, their eyes darting over the shifting mist, searching for figures that refused to be seen. Jace was gone. Davids. Ortega. Names that would soon be nothing more than etched metal on a memorial wall. We don't have a lifetime, Carter said. We have now, and we're going to make every second count. Kim's smirk was brief. Any brilliant ideas, Captain? We hit them where they don't expect it, Carter said. He glanced toward Reese. How much of that Kryn tech can we still use? Reese exhaled through his nose, motioning toward a pile of scavenged enemy parts. Not much. Their weapons are fused to their physiology. But their drones, those are different. Their programming's too complex for me to hack, but I might be able to force a feedback loop. Kim raised a brow. And in English? If I do it right, it'll fry every Kryn connected to the same system, Reese said. But I don't know how many are linked to this frequency. It might be all of them, Carter said. Or none. Reese wiped a hand down his face. Yeah, that's the fun part. The Kryn did not grant them time to deliberate further. The first shot came soundlessly, a shimmering bolt of energy that sliced through the air between them. It missed, but just barely. Carter rolled into cover as the world around them ignited in flashes of violet and red. They're testing us, Kim muttered, flattening against the jagged rock beside him. Seeing how we react. Then let's give them something unexpected, Carter said. He signaled to the others, and they moved as one. Human instinct, honed through chaos and desperation, kicked in. They fired in staggered bursts, forcing the Kryn to shift their patterns. Hale lobbed a smoke grenade, its thick plumes swirling through the battlefield, disrupting the enemy's line of sight, if they even relied on something as primitive as vision. The Kryn flickered in and out of existence, their bodies phasing as they adapted to the shifting terrain. But Carter had fought enough battles to know a simple truth. The smarter the enemy, the harder they fell when something defied their logic. Reese now, he shouted. Reese slammed the override switch on the salvage Kryn drone. A sharp, high-pitched whine tore through the air, like a live wire sparking against metal. The Kryn reacted instantly. Some stumbled mid-attack. Others convulsed as their limbs seized, caught in a glitch they did not understand. And then, for the first time, Carter saw something new. Hesitation. One of the Kryn, a commander by its markings, faltered. Its body, once fluid in motion, stiffened as its neural connection struggled to stabilize. And in that moment, Carter knew, these creatures weren't gods. They weren't invincible. They were a network, and networks could break. He didn't hesitate. Sprinting from cover, he launched himself toward the fallen commander, his rifle swinging up. The Kryn turned its void-like eyes on him, something flickering behind them. Not fear, not pain, but the cold realization of an error. Carter pulled the trigger. The round tore through its head, splintering the metallic surface. The Kryn convulsed once before collapsing. The others followed. Like puppets with severed strings, the remaining Kryn shuddered and fell. Some flickered wildly, their phasing tech stuttering before deactivating altogether. Others simply crumpled, lifeless, their bodies collapsing under the weight of a severed consciousness. Silence fell. Carter stood there, breathing hard, weapons still raised. Around him, his team remained frozen, waiting, unsure if it was truly over. Hale was the first to break it. We just unplugged them. Kim let out a breathless laugh. All that tech, and they didn't think to install a firewall. Reese wiped sweat from his forehead. You're welcome, by the way. Carter wasn't listening. His gaze was on the horizon, where the mist had begun to clear. For the first time since landing, the landscape stretched out before them, unshrouded. The Kryn's presence had kept this place in darkness, their energy distorting the very air. But now, with them gone, the planet felt different. Alive. A crackle in his earpiece made him look up. This is Command. Carter, do you read? He pressed his comm loud and clear. Reinforcements are en route. Report. Carter exhaled. His team was battered, their numbers reduced, but they were standing. The Kryn were gone. At least for now. We won, he said. Another pause on the other end. Then understood. Prepare for extraction. Kim moved beside him, following his gaze toward the empty battlefield. They're going to come back, aren't they? Carter nodded. Yeah. And they won't make the same mistake twice. No. She shifted her rifle against her shoulder. Then I guess we'll just have to keep surprising them. Carter didn't answer right away. He looked out at the vast, alien world stretching before them, at the silence left in the wake of battle. Humanity had survived its first encounter with the Kryn. But survival wasn't victory. It was only the beginning. The horizon burned with the first light of a foreign sun, its pale glow stretching over the battlefield like fingers peeling back the night. The ground was still littered with the remains of the Kryn, their bodies, if they could be called that, twisted in unnatural shapes, flickering with residual energy. Some of them still pulsed faintly, as though their neural systems hadn't yet accepted defeat. The sight should have felt like victory. It didn't. Carter stood at the edge of the battlefield, his rifle slung across his back. His body ached with exhaustion, but his mind refused to rest. The Kryn had been stopped, but something about their retreat felt wrong. They had collapsed too easily, their network severed in a way that suggested a weakness they never should have had. A flaw in their design? A failure of their technology? Or something worse, something deliberate? Kim approached from his left, her boots crunching softly against the scorched earth. Reinforcements will be here in 10, she said, voice quiet, measured. Command wants a full debrief as soon as we're aboard. Carter exhaled, watching as the mist slowly reclaimed the fallen. They're not going to like what we have to say. Kim let out a short, humorless laugh. When do they ever? Reese joined them, wiping grime from his face with the back of his glove. I don't get it, he muttered, kicking at a piece of shattered Kryn plating. If they're so advanced, why the hell didn't they see this coming? They did. Carter's voice was steady, but his gut twisted as he said it. They let it happen. Reese frowned. You think they wanted to lose? No, Carter said, but I think they were testing something. Us. The words settled over them like a weight. Kim folded her arms, looking back at the wreckage. That's a hell of a way to run an experiment. Carter's jaw tightened. He'd fought enough battles to know when an enemy had been truly beaten. The Kryn weren't beaten. They were observing, adapting. He could feel it. A low tremor rumbled beneath their feet. Subtle, barely perceptible, but it was there. Hale turned sharply, eyes narrowing. Did you feel that? Reese crouched, pressing a hand to the ground. His fingers curled inward. Yeah, and it's not an aftershock. Another tremor, stronger this time. The scattered remains of the Kryn twitched, the remnants of their metallic bodies shivering against the dirt. A pulse rippled through the air like the static charge before a storm. Moo! Carter shouted. They barely had time to react before the ground beneath them cracked open. From the fissures, a surge of dark, liquid-like energy erupted, twisting into the sky like writhing tendrils. The fallen Kryn bodies jerked, their fragmented parts snapping together, reforming. But they weren't returning to life. They were merging. The battlefield itself was shifting. The technology, the remains, the very soil of this world was becoming something else. Command, this is Carter, he barked in his comm. already moving. Something's happening. Something big. The response came laced with static. Captain, say again. Your signal is... A shriek tore through the air, high-pitched and unnatural. The kind of sound that burrowed into the brain, twisting thoughts into chaos. Carter gritted his teeth as his visor flickered with unreadable data, the HUD struggling to process whatever the hell was unfolding in front of them. The Kryn hadn't lost. They had changed. The amalgamation of their fallen forms twisted into something new, something massive. A towering construct of shifting metal and pulsating energy, its body still half-formed, still figuring out what it was becoming. Carter's fingers clenched around his rifle, but every instinct told him that bullets wouldn't make a difference now. Fall back, he ordered. Kim was already moving, pulling Reese with her. Hail covered their retreat, firing off rounds that did little more than spark harmlessly against the entity's surface. Another pulse of energy erupted from the construct, sending a shockwave through the air. Carter barely managed to stay on his feet as the ground beneath him trembled. He didn't look back. There was no point. He knew what he'd see. A war machine, assembling itself from the wreckage of its own kind. A second wave, a new evolution, and they were standing on its proving ground. The dropships arrived just as the construct took its first step. The tremor it sent through the earth was heavier than any before, a declaration of something far worse than simple war. Carter barely made it onto the ramp before the pilot screamed into the comms. We're leaving now. The ship lurched upward, engines roaring as it climbed through the thick, alien sky. Through the viewport, Carter watched as the battlefield shrank beneath them. The construct remained, unmoving, as though watching them go. Learning. Kim sat heavily beside him, her breath coming fast. I don't think we just fought the Kryn. Carter's hands curled into fists. No, he agreed. We fought their first draft. No one spoke after that. There was nothing left to say. The war hadn't ended. It had just begun.